Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 mini-series with the Los Angeles Angels. And whether you are new to the channel or whether you've been with us for the past several years, thank you for taking the time to watch this episode. We've had a really fantastic reception to the first several episodes of this OOTP 26 series, and I want to sincerely thank everyone for viewing these episodes and finding us in this little corner of the internet. If you haven't subscribed and you like what we're doing, would certainly appreciate that, and always appreciate some thumbs up and some interaction in the comment section with our viewers, who are affectionately known as our worldwide scouting department, and help us make some decisions along the way during these series that we play. And today we're actually going to be reacting to several viewer comments from the last few episodes. As you may have noticed, we're still on the first day of the off-season, so we are aggressively making some decisions as far as what this pretty putrid 64-98 Los Angeles Angels team should look like next season. Already made one significant trade as of the beginning of this offseason, bringing on Robbie Ray from the Yankees to potentially be one of our better starters next year. He's in the final year of a big contract and got the Yankees to retain a big chunk of that. And we've actually done some more work on trades as well since the last episode, and actually completed one. You may remember that we shopped Logan O'Hoppe and Nolan Shawnell towards the end of our last episode. We made a big trade last season when we moved on from Mike Trout and brought Adley Rutschman on board, which moved O'Hoppe to kind of a first base DH role, which is kind of where we already had Shawnell. So Angels fan Gilbert Gonzalez suggested, well, before giving up on the homegrown Angels like Shawnell and O'Hoppe, maybe check what you could get for Adley Rutschman, and then you could move Logan O'Hoppe back to catcher and maybe get a pitcher or outfielder there. We've got some holes on the team. And it was a good idea to do this, and I was a little surprised when I shopped Rutschman. Demand for him might be just a hair higher than Logan O'Hoppe, but it definitely doesn't jump off the page for a catcher who is above average defensively, and certainly for a catcher above average offensively as well. Combined for a 4 WAR last season between Baltimore and the Angels. He is starting to get more expensive, going to be making around $11 million next year in his second to last arbitration season. So I think that the fact that O'Hoppe was younger and less expensive worked in his favor. But since Rutschman is ultimately better defensively, and I think that will help our pitching staff, and we really weren't going to get much more for him than we could get for O'Hoppe, we decided to hold tight for the time being. Doesn't mean that we won't move on from other players as this offseason moves along, but for the time being, we are not going to do anything as far as O'Hoppe, Rutschman, and Shawnell. That does not mean that we haven't done another trade yet, and if you were looking closely at the previous screen, you probably saw what we did, but we traded away Taylor Ward, got a 1-point hit to fan interest, but ultimately I think this trade makes sense for us. Ward, certainly one of our better power hitters with 19 homers and 59 ribbies last year, but when all was said and done was basically a league average player and barely above replacement level, and he was set to be making about $9.5 million next year. So we were likely not going to make him an offer in arbitration anyways. And we bundled him with another guy, Mickey Moniak, who honestly had a better chance of making our team with a salary of less than $4 million in arbitration next year. Like Moniak in the clubhouse, like his speed, and he probably, with the fact that Trout is no longer with us, is the best potential center fielder we had on the 40-man roster. But that being said, for almost $4 million for a guy who, although he could play a more than competent defensive center field, really is not, in my view, a big-time major league bat, made me willing to include Moniak in the deal as well. We got some cash back from the Blue Jays. We got a minor league infielder in Cade Doughty, 24 years old. Doesn't look like a big-time prospect, but could be a useful utility infielder in the majors with a good personality, including that captain personality class. And most importantly, we got Addison Barger in return. A very versatile defensive player, 25-year-old, but basically can play respectable to good defense at any position on the field except for catcher. So I think there's a lot of value there. His bat is certainly not particularly impressive. He put up an 82 WRC plus for Toronto last year, but he's versatile defensively. He's got some speed, and his bat is certainly an acceptable major league bat. And he's a left-handed hitter who looks like against righties he could certainly hold his own. So felt like he's the type of versatile player who can upgrade our defense around the team, play in the infield, play in the outfield, depending on what we're able to do in free agency this year. And we basically picked him and Doughty up for a guy we were definitely moving on from in Ward and a guy we were likely moving on from in Moniak. I did search for higher-end outfielders, and I did search for starting pitchers based on some of the guys that we were looking at when we had shopped Ohapi in the last episode. And honestly, I just could not find anybody that I felt was more than a fourth or fifth starter. And even then, the prices for those players were fairly high. Certainly doesn't mean that we won't end up making a trade with Ohapi or Shawnell as thing moves on. I think we still are probably an established starting pitcher or two light at this point. But there is still time for us to make trades throughout the offseason, explore the free agent market. Can always hope that maybe there's some brilliant international free agent that comes over. So when all was said and done, that's the one trade that we've made since the last episode. Did take the hit to fan interest. And with moving on from the outfielders, Taylor Ward and Mickey Moniak, we have made one further arbitration decision. We are going to offer Jake Fraley to come back. Another guy who's a borderline competent center fielder if we need to play him there, depending on what we're able to do in free agency and the trade market going forward. He's got good speed. The bat on paper doesn't jump off the page, but I have to be cognizant of the fact that with both Cincinnati and with our Angels, he was a well above average offensive player last year, put up a career best 4.1 WAR between the two levels, and is a left-handed hitting outfielder who's going to be making a little less than $6 million next year. It's not inconceivable to me, depending on what happens through free agency, that Fraley could end up as a, I think, very good fourth outfielder for us. But it's also not inconceivable that he ends up starting for us in left or right field. And there's certainly a scenario where he starts in center field for us next year as well, although ideally I'd like someone who's a little better than him defensively. So Reed Detmers, who had a big-time year for us and was an all-star, Rutschman, Fraley, and Zach Neto, who, at least according to the trades that we've been working on, is probably viewed as the most valuable player in our organization, are the only four that we are definitely looking to bring back. Actually, that's not true. We're also going to make an offer now to Joe Adele, Another guy similar to Fraley who will be in the mix for a corner outfield spot for us. Adele led us with 27 homers last year, 2.3 WAR, had a respectable season, and only looking for 4.4 million. So we're going to try to lock him up right now as well, but still have a lot of other decisions as far as these arbitration eligible players that we'll be working on. Certainly we'll be bringing O'Hoppe back. Just haven't decided to make an official offer to him yet, since we continue to explore the trade market. Also wanted to note that we perhaps have the worst batch of 4 free agents ever that we could submit qualifying offers to. 38-year-old closer Kenley Jansen, shortstop Tim Anderson, who looks like he's about done at this point, second baseman Kevin Newman, who's not too far ahead of him, and then the middle-aged 35-year-old reliever Chris Stratton, who we had to pick up to take his modest salary back this season, when we dumped Anthony Rendon several months ago. Certainly not going to be submitting a qualifying offer in excess of $20 million to any of those players. Honestly, if you told me I could have all 4 of them back for $20 million next year, I wouldn't take you up on that offer either. And got another comment to the last episode from longtime viewer Fake Name about hoping to see what we had done in the development lab. And fortunately, we haven't done anything in the development lab yet. So we're going to spend a little time taking a look at the enhanced development lab. The most notable thing that I've picked up on so far as the programs is that secondary pitch improvement looks like it's typically a medium difficulty program for most pitchers this season compared to last. Last year, I believe it was typically an easy program in OOTP 25, and it was pretty overpowered. I put out a tutorial video, which you can check on the channel if you're interested in what we learned in the scouting lab, but definitely had a very high success rate with people improving secondary pitch improvements, and it was a program that we really came to rely on. So probably does make sense that it's a little more difficult to get that secondary pitch improvement than it was a year ago. And for the development lab here in this Los Angeles Angels mini-series, we are going to be using the default 8 spots in the development lab. Hopefully we'll garner some information. Since we don't have a ton of top-end prospects, think that certainly, at least this first time through, we're going to focus on some of the better young players in our organization who we think still have some ability to improve. And we're going to start off with first baseman Nolan Schonel. As I mentioned, it's not inconceivable that we move on from Schonel or O'Hoppe, but there's also a scenario where we end up actually using O'Hoppe as our backup catcher to Rutschman next year. Would likely be starting O'Hoppe at DH, certainly against left-handed pitchers and maybe sometimes against right-handed pitchers, while also trying to use him as the backup for Rutschman. So that's certainly a scenario where we wouldn't need to move on from either of those guys next year. We do at this point have first base and DH open, so we certainly have spots for both of them in the starting lineup, even with Rutschman at catcher. Hate to potentially get a program started with one of these guys and trade them away, but as I noted, we still haven't actually moved a day forward yet, so I'd view these decisions as placeholders, and clearly if there is a big deal to be had in the next day or two, we'll have time to move on to somebody else in the development lab if we do end up trading one of these guys away. Schonel, we think, has potential for better home run power than we have seen from him. So we are going to put him in that generate bat speed program. Definitely, based on our experience in OOTP 25 last year, one of the harder ones to make work. But if he's going to be a first baseman for us, it would certainly be helpful if he had a little more pop in his bat. And hopefully including him in the development lab will help with that. Zach Neto, as I mentioned, one of the most valuable players in our organization when we've been trying for some of those better starting pitchers and guys who could help in our outfield. Neto typically seems to be the most valuable guy. Not that him alone can net us a superstar in return, but looks like he's got some ability to improve his eye. So we are going to bring Neto on board and put him into the plate discipline program, which is generally easier than the bat speed program. I won't walk you through all of these decisions one at a time. I'll make the rest of them offline, and then we'll check back with how we filled the other 6 slots. And we ended up going with 4 position players and 4 pitchers in the development lab, in addition to Shawnell and Neto. Logan O'Hoppe going to work on plate discipline, and Joe Adele going to work on quality of contact among the position players. And then with pitchers, Chase Silselth, Rusney Contreras, and second-round pick from this past draft, the college pitcher Evan Crest, going to all be working on control. Ben Joyce going to be working on pitch movement for us. One of the findings we had in OOTP 25 is that we had a much higher success rate with the control program than with the increased pitch movement program. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the same here in 26, but most of these guys seem to have capacity to improve in both areas, so we defaulted to the control, hoping we might have a little higher success rate there. Joyce definitely had more potential upside in increased pitch movement, so that's why we decided to go there with him. So hopefully we'll have a good level of success in the development lab this first time through. Obviously, we'll get midterm progress reports in the not-too-distant future, and if we do decide to trade any of these guys over the near term, we'll get someone else into the development lab. Otherwise, we'll wait for these programs to finish and then probably have 8 defensive or speed-oriented briefer programs when we finish these longer programs that take 3 to 4 months up. And a couple final things to talk about quickly before we move on to finishing up this episode with the fact that we just made those trades and we got a couple of arbitration eligible guys in Mr. Ward, most notably, as well as Mr. Moniak off of the books. And we got some cash back in return. We've put ourselves financially in a situation where we've now got over 9 figures to potentially spend this offseason on free agents. Now, our extension number is lower than that because of some of the excess cash that we've built up in these trades, and also the fact that there's arbitration-eligible players who are going to be making X amount in 2026 who will be making 1.5 or 2.5 times X the year after that in arbitration. But we've definitely got a lot of flexibility to try to improve this team now. And we're going to attempt to be big players in the upcoming free agent period. The top 2 position players, as far as I'm concerned, are the first baseman Vlad Guerrero Jr. Did get a tongue-in-cheek suggestion from one of the members of the Worldwide Scouting Department. It was Kevin McDowell who suggested jokingly to maybe move Guerrero to third base, since we're kind of potentially full at first base and DH with Shawnell and O'Hoppe in case we don't make a trade. Given that brutal infield range and poor error rating, that would be bold even for me. It does seem like Guerrero could potentially play left or right. He wouldn't be great out there. but certainly could be trained up decently. So Guerrero is the highest end bat available. Honestly, I feel like Kyle Tucker probably fits our needs better. We need help in the outfield, and he's a good, solid hitter. Put up a 124 WRC plus last year for the Cubs. Also a competent outfielder, another guy who could play center field for us in a pinch. Might have to play center field for us every day if we brought him on board. Played primarily right field this past year, where he was well above average. You look at his zone rating and defensive efficiency, and he was slightly below average in both of those in a very small sample size. Other guys we certainly would think about. Cody Bellinger could be a more cost-effective and better defensive center field option, although probably not as good a bat as Tucker. Put up just an 89 WRC plus for the Yankees last year. Alec Bregman could certainly help us at third base. Cedric Mullins, if we were going pure defense in center field with some speed and a lower price tag, a guy who could certainly get in the mix. And then there's still other first basemen around who could have a little pop in their bats. Josh Naylor, Ryan O'Hearn, some veteran catchers in terms of Danny Jansen, Sal Perez, and Jose Trevino. Don't really need any of them with Rutschman on board, but a lot of interesting options out there. Pitching-wise, we'll ultimately go after some relievers, but I think our primary focus is certainly going to be starting pitchers. If Dylan Cease was not coming off that torn UCL, he was going to be right at the top of our list. But between Brandon Woodruff, Michael King, Dustin May, Nestor Cortez, and even Jack Flaherty, I think there's plenty of guys who look like good, solid major league pitchers. The names I mentioned, we're going to be spending 14 to 20 million a year for, so certainly not any bargains out there for these guys in their late 20s and early 30s. But if I had to put a high level plan together, and this is something that I'd love feedback from the worldwide scouting department on, I'd say of the pitchers I just mentioned, Flaherty, Cortez, May, King, and Woodruff, definitely would see us making a play to bring one at least of those 5 starters on board to bolster our rotation with another good, solid major league pitcher, albeit probably overpaid for what they are, but that is unfortunately the nature of the free agent market. And then, so you figure that's about 20 million there. We're weak everywhere except catcher. So we can use help in the infield, and we can still use help in the outfield, even though at this point we're committed for at least next year to both Fraley and Adele for probably 2 of our corner outfield spots. I think right now I would probably lean towards bringing Kyle Tucker on rather than Vlad Guerrero Jr. Tucker better defensively in the outfield, likely to cost a little bit less, but I think we'll ultimately need to see exactly how many years these guys are looking for. And ultimately, we also need to make sure that all of these guys actually hit the free agent market, because there's still over 3 weeks until free agents can file, and it's possible some of these players will re-sign with their current teams before then, which if only one of Guerrero and Tucker are out there, then our decision which way to go with the highest of the high-end free agents is pretty clear. Assuming that we ended up going after a Tucker, though, I think and this is hard for me to say as a Yankees fan, I think we'd probably go for Alex Bregman alongside him to really stabilize that third base position for us. Had a solid year with a 126 WRC plus and a 3.1 WAR for the Red Sox last year. Looks like he did only play 100 games, so he presumably had some injury issues. Yeah, broken collarbone that kept him out for 2 months, but that was early in the season, so he put up those numbers after he came back, and he's still normal in terms of his injury proneness. I'd say right now I think the plan is to pursue a Tucker, a Bregman, and one of the pitchers, and we're probably going to be spending about $80 million if we bring those 3 players on board, which would still leave us with a little bit more money to maybe add a second or third tier free agent, including potentially an arm or 2 for the bullpen. But certainly with an established starting pitcher, a all-star third baseman, and an all-star outfielder would feel a lot better about our roster than I do today. I could certainly see a different scenario developing, though, where we ended up going after Cody Bellinger and Vlad Guerrero Jr. And as I mentioned, there's 5 starting pitchers that I am most interested in, assuming that I'm not going to go for Cease with big money coming off of that injury. But that could be an option as well. So one of those 5 starting pitchers also, and I'll feel like we'll have spent a lot of money, but potentially did a lot to improve this team. And the last thing that I'm going to touch upon, and you'll understand why I've spent so much money looking at these screens and our scouting accuracies when I talk about what I'm going to do right now, but a lot of talk about scouting, and we had thought that we were going to stick with Tim McIlvaine, who has very good skills, but he's got that favorability preference that we don't really love. And with some of the money that we picked up in the trades that we've made, I think I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off and just fire him now. Had some good discussions in the comments to the last episode from the likes of Pep, NS1CLRK, and Jeansy as far as when is the right time to replace coaches in general, scouts in particular, and what type of hit do you actually take to the scouting accuracy when you make those changes. So I thought, as a service to the viewer base out there who's wondering, you can see right now the type of scouting accuracy we have on this list of the primary free agents, the ones that we've been talking about: Vlad Guerrero Jr., Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger, and Alex Bregman, as well as Cedric Mullins, among others. We've got very high scouting accuracy on all of those players right now. We'll find out exactly how much that scouting accuracy falls when we fire our current scout and then ultimately look to replace him. And there is a guy who is a highly favored tools scout who is not quite as proficient as our current scout, but kind of fits the way that I like to scout better. For those who haven't followed my and honestly others' thoughts on the scouting topic over the years, the general belief, consensus, fact, depending on how you look at it, is that highly favorability scouts are going to kind of report on exactly what they see, what the player can do now, and probably are going to be pretty accurate in terms of finding you good, solid major leaguers. The those highly favored tool scouts are going to be projecting a lot more what a player might become, not necessarily based on their ability today. And I think the thought is that using highly favored tool scouts may allow you to, over time, unearth some more hidden gems and diamonds in the rough with a lot of upside that a highly favorability scout might not have as high a ceiling on, because they're just looking at their current ability today and not really projecting as aggressively forward what they might become. And I've typically, over the last several seasons, played with highly favored tool scouts. So we are going to go ahead and fire Mr. McIlvaine, which is going to likely, I'm assuming, when we go back to the transaction screen, see a very different situation, as you can see here. Actually, we still see very high scouting accuracy on the upcoming free agents: Guerrero, Tucker. Interesting. Maybe there have been some changes made to the game this year. Maybe things will look different when I sim forward a day, because it is weird that when we look at all the free agents, we're kind of average-ish scouting accuracy on the current free agents. Now, I have scouted most of the upcoming top free agents pretty aggressively throughout the playoffs, figuring that we were going to be big players in the market. So maybe because we've got recent reports on most of these guys, that makes them be valid with that high scouting accuracy for longer. Regardless, if we do lose some of this scouting accuracy in the coming weeks, my thought was that these are all real players who I kind of know a lot about them, and I can see what they did last year. And I've obviously just spent a lot of time making a video where I can see what their ratings actually were with my other scout if I wanted to go back and look. So it seemed like it was just a time to rip off the scab, rip off the Band-Aid, however you want to describe a little bit of short-term pain for hopefully long-term gain. And bring on the type of scout that we really want to have. And as I mentioned, there's a guy that I have kind of targeted. It seems like highly favored tools scouts are not particularly available right now, but the one that I am most interested in is Cody McAllister, 41-year-old, highly favored tools scout, as we said, excellent in the majors and excellent with amateurs, good in the minors and good with international scouting. So he's not a perfect scout for us, but at least he'll give us a highly favored tools guy going forward, assuming that we're able to actually sign him. He's looking for a massive amount of money, almost $1.2 million a year for the next 4 years. We'll cut that back to a lousy $1 million a year for the next 5 years, submit an offer to Mr. McAllister, and hopefully we will have a scout on board in the not too distant future, along with all of the other many moves and firings and job offers that we have involving both our minor league coaches and our major league coaching staff as well. So a busy episode, although again we didn't actually move forward in terms of our time at all, but we added Addison Barger into the mix, got rid of a couple older players who were trending towards being more expensive and likely weren't huge parts of our future. Spent some time thinking about the development lab, outlined our initial thoughts on free agency, and then decided to go ahead and just make a big move in terms of scouting. So hopefully when we get a new scout on board, we will see what the upcoming free agents look like. But it does seem at this point, since we had scouted them relatively recently, that we still have very high scouting accuracy in our organization on the guys that we've been considering, which would be a nice improvement to the game. As I mentioned, good conversation in the comments to this last episode with Pep, NS1, CLRK, and Jeetsy about some of the quirks in terms of firing scouts and moving on to new scouts that have been in past versions of the game. And based on this, it seems like it's plausible that if you've recently scouted a person, your accuracy is going to be pretty high, which makes sense. Just because one guy leaves doesn't mean that the entire scouting department falls apart. Regardless, hopefully we will get that new scout on board over the next several days. It's October 30th today, and free agency filings don't happen until November 22nd. So we've got over 3 weeks. Hopefully we'll have close to 3 weeks with the new scout to very aggressively scout the pending free agents and ensure that when we do get to free agency, we're going to have as good information as possible to make some good decisions and hopefully really start rebuilding this roster. Because as I noted, it was a pretty rough season for the Angels this past year. We made a ton of trades to rip the roster down to the studs and free up a lot of money. And when we get to free agency in 3 weeks, it's going to be time to start hopefully putting that money to good use. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.